Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have new releases for young readers, uncertainty within a Florida library board, and a Wisconsin school board reversing a controversial ban on negative comments. Coming this Friday, we have an interview with Sarah F. Schachter, author of Georgia Watson and the 99% Campaign. Let's start this week with new releases, starting with A Day Off School by Oliver Jeffers, illustrated by Oliver Jeffers and Kevin Waldron. Time at Home with the Sniffles yields wild imaginings for the familiar-feeling child at the heart of Jeffers and Waldron's madcap account. After Herbie's parents say he can stay home from school, the excited child enjoys time in bed, breakfast in a couch fort, video games, and more, all before lunch. Wry knowing prose captures the predictable emergence of boredom. Although Herbie tried not to, he soon thought of school. He was mildly interested in the work he was avoiding. Soon the protagonist expands upon what he may be missing, shifting rapidly from mundane possibilities to more far-fetched alternatives that leave him yearning to return. Loosely inked mixed media illustrations amplify the child's flights of fancy with enlivening coloration. The restorative power of boredom cures all in this audacious tale. Background characters are depicted with various skin tones, and this book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is HeartLand by Jilanne Hoffman. Across an evocative story of agricultural upheaval, Hoffman follows a curious tween's search for answers about her past in her guarded mother's childhood diaries. 12-year-old Sila, a space-obsessed bookworm who reads as white, would rather lose herself in library books than tend to the endless chores on her family's Iowa farm. This puts her at odds with her overworked mother, Cassie, who wishes that Sila was invested in the property. Tensions rise with the arrival of Algeria, a capable and conscientious tween whose Mexican-American family rents a nearby house and who seems to Sila like the daughter her mother wishes she had. When Sila discovers Cassie's old journals, she becomes absorbed in her mother's past, especially the mystery of Sila's absent father, whom Cassie refuses to discuss. Interspersed among Sila's inquisitive present-day first-person perspective, verse diary entries transport readers to the 1980s, where a younger Cassie emerges as a budding environmental activist, determined to challenge her own parents' resilience on harmful farming practices. As Sila uncovers signs of a worsening environmental threat on her family's farm, past and present narratives intertwine, linking buried secrets with larger questions about land stewardship and responsibility. This is an illuminating exploration of the enduring impact of past decisions on future generations. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Raven Rising by Kristen Hartman Derr. Cherokee Nation citizen author Derr makes her debut in this cozy, lived-in fantasy novel about a magical tween baker healing from loss. 12-year-old Raven Miller used to love to bake, a hobby she shared with her mother, who was white. Following her parents' deaths, she stops baking. Newly arrived in Bear Creek Falls, where she now lives with her aunt Coral, Raven attempts to get back into a routine. But attending school proves just as isolating as staying at home, especially when popular girls start spreading rumors that Raven is a witch who killed her parents. Things start looking up when Aunt Coral allows Raven to take in a stray cat and her kittens, and Raven befriends classmates Laurel and Hazel. Together, the tweens organize against their reproachful vice principal, whom they believe is unfairly targeting BIPOC students with dress code violations. As Raven grapples with grief and guilt, she simultaneously contends with feelings of disconnect from her culinary passions and her father's indigenous heritage. Warm and winning interactions between family and friends buoy the somber undercurrent that runs through each smoothly layered, expertly conceived plot thread. The outcome is a gentle, uplifting portrait of a tween seeking and finding support. Includes an author's note and Cherokee term glossary. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. Next is Buried Feelings by Kit Rosewater. Rosewater draws upon San Francisco's queer history to fuel a high stakes citywide treasure hunt that gives way to a propulsive friends to enemies to lovers romance. The summer before her sophomore year, Ivy and her then bestie Cam spent the season scouring the city for clues about hidden treasure hinted at in a mysterious book once owned by Cam's late uncle. Ivy also came out to Cam as a lesbian, though she expected Cam to be supportive and understanding. Cam instead ended their friendship. In the 2 years following their estrangement, Cam came out as transgender, and Ivy found a place to belong among her fellow yearbook editors. After Ivy uncovers a forgotten clue from her uncle and Cam's treasure hunt, she resolves to pick up where it left off, without Cam. When Cam catches wind, he attempts to race Ivy to the hunt's conclusion, igniting a parallel adventure that disrupts the protagonist's stubborn grudges, unearths buried feelings, and sparks within both a new appreciation for their hometown. Ivy's cheeky and inviting POV expertly relays immersive discussions about queer history and intimate relationship dynamics, while jaunty pacing heightens the thrill of treasure hunting hijinks. The result is a deliciously fun romp about the necessity of friendship and the power of belonging. This book is recommended for ages 12 and up. Next is Free Girls by Kristen McCallum. Recently released from a juvenile detention center, Black 16-year-old Jasmine struggles to adjust to her family's new affluent lifestyle in an uneven contemporary drama. McCallum's debut. Jasmine's overprotective mother, who recently remarried, is determined that the family move on from the teen's past at Guiding Heart's home for troubled girls. She even goes so far as to lie to Jasmine's new stepfamily about the truth surrounding her year away and forbids Jasmine from contacting her former friends. Jasmine chafes against the deception and her mother's strict rules, which causes tension within the household, particularly between Jasmine and stepsister Kayla. Caught between a past she is encouraged to forget and a present that refuses to accept her, Jasmine struggles to maintain balance, especially when an old flame from the center re-enters her life, threatening to upend the fragile stability she's trying to build. Occasional contradictions between character dialogue and actions somewhat undermine the impact of overarching conversations about the juvenile justice system. Still, restrained prose depicts Jasmine as a sympathetic protagonist, and readers will find it easy to root for her to find her place and voice in this straightforward coming-of-age portrait. This book is recommended for ages 12 and up. The final title this week is The Lure of Wolves and Whispers by Amanda Connolly. A desperate 19-year-old strikes a deadly deal to save her older sister in Connolly's pulse-pounding romantasy debut. After mages fail to overthrow the Isle of Irane's tyrannical royals, the High King drains the island's magical reservoirs and executes everyone who supported the attempted coup. It's considered treason to barter with rebel smugglers, the Whisperers, for scraps of magic brought in from elsewhere, but needs must when Maeve Fallon's reckless sister Finn gets slashed with a poisoned blade during a fight. In exchange for enough magic to heal a rapidly deteriorating Finn, Maeve makes a deal with a rebel to participate in a to-the-death tournament as the token peasant competing against 6 cutthroat noble daughters. The winner marries ruthless Crown Prince Cashel and will become Irane's next High Queen. Maeve doesn't need to survive the tournament to fulfill her end of the bargain. Instead, she must use the opening the competition provides to assassinate the High King, and set the stage for a pro-magic revolution. Maeve's candid narration amplifies the tale's emotional impact, while subtle, effective world building adds texture. Political intrigue, high stakes action, and a steamy love triangle between white cute characters combine for a twisty, electrifying trilogy launch. This book is recommended for ages 16 and up. That covers the new releases for this week. Next, we'll be taking a look at some news. But first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Now let's take a look at some news, starting with the Florida Board of Education voting to ban undocumented students from public colleges. A recent policy approved by the Florida State Board of Education will no longer allow undocumented immigrants to attend public colleges within the state. In a remote board meeting, the panel voted to require all students admitted to the state's 28 public colleges to be a U.S. citizen or lawfully present in the United States. There was no debate, discussion, or public questions taken regarding the policy, though dozens of public commenters phoned in to speak against the policy. Representative Anna Escamani, a Democrat from Orlando, spoke during public comment, quote, "I just wanted to emphasize that this morning's meeting was started with a prayer, and it is important to know that we are all God's children. And the attempt to restrict a child's access to higher education based on the documentation status that is no fault of their own is un-American. It's unfaithful, and it's constitutionally concerning. Because, obviously, the Florida legislature, we did not pass legislation on this matter." End quote. All public schools in the United States are open to all residents, regardless of citizenship or status. Right now, undocumented immigrants are eligible to enroll in public K-12 schools, and often their guardians are liable for truancy laws that mandate their children must be enrolled in some form of education. There are no state or federal laws barring undocumented immigrants from public schools, either K-12 or college. There are also efforts from the Florida Board of Governors that seek to implement the same policy in further institutions. For now, there is no word whether this policy will be enforceable, if it will be challenged, or if it will be reversed by courts. Make sure to follow the Book Fair podcast in case anything on this story changes. Next, also from Florida, Escambia County is skirting its own rules regarding the West Florida public library system. Last month, County Administrator Wes Moreno canceled any further meetings of the West Florida Public Library Board of Governance until further notice. Board Chairman Blaine Wall responded by calling for a special meeting by July 1st under his powers as chairman. His call has been ignored by county officials. Wall sent a second request in writing to Library Director Cristal Bell Rivera and others at the county. Wall told the news journal at pnj.com that no one had responded, even though Library Director Bell Rivera continued sending weekly reports on operations to him and the rest of the board. Chairman Wall believes the county is ignoring his calls for a special meeting, calling this a clear abuse of power, by County Administrator Wes Moreno. For further context on the state of the Library Board, there have been 2 vacancies on the board since the end of February that have not been filled as of July 2nd. After this story was first reported by PNJ.com, Escambia County has confirmed that the Library Board meetings have been intentionally canceled, with no additional comment at this time. Under the establishment of the East Florida Public Library System, the board falls under the jurisdiction of Escambia County, and Pensacola, Florida is the county seat. Large cities tend to be more progressive, and with the county covering a wider area, there seems to be contention between the public library and the more conservative leaning Escambia County. The city of Pensacola is essentially washing their hands of this issue, eschewing the responsibility to the county, which is the governing body that is asserting control over the library board and its chairman. This will be your weekly reminder that local elections have a major impact on your community. If you live in a major city, it can still be important to stay current on local elections. Elections for district and county positions can lead to situations like Escambia County shutting out their library director. Our next story is from Monroeville, Pennsylvania, where an official requested the removal of a Pride Month display from a public library. June is over, but we are still seeing the fallout of reactionists wanting to remove diversity and inclusion from public spaces. Towards the end of June, the Monroeville Public Library removed its Pride Month children's book display following a directive from local officials. Kelly Meredith, president of the Monroeville Public Library Board of Directors, said that the decision was made to remove the display after the municipal manager directed staff to take it down. Quote, "On Friday, I received the word from the library board that the municipal manager had directed our library director to take down the display in the children's room." End quote. A council member had shared a Facebook post from the library's children's room on June 19th, questioning the appropriateness of the book bans. Quote, "Should these books be available for children at the Monroeville Library? I think not. I don't care what adults do. This is child sexual grooming." End quote. These dangerous and violent remarks have led to the removal of the display. Kelly Meredith went on to say in response to community discourse, quote, "There was a lot of pressure and it was a very difficult decision because we don't want to set a precedent that says that the council can come in and dictate what displays are appropriate for the library. But we had to do what the library staff felt would keep them safest in this situation." End quote. There are more direct quotes from members of the community, but that is about all there is to the original article posted on WTAE.com. However, more has come out in the weeks since this first broke to local news. After a board meeting, Monroeville City Manager Alex Gaziani reached out to the library staff to replace the Pride display with content aligned with the town's July 4th celebrations. While library staff spoke publicly about the removal, there are questions whether the decision to remove the Pride display complies with Pennsylvania's Sunshine Act, which bars officials from conducting public business behind closed doors. Melissa Maluski, attorney at the Pennsylvania News Media Association, said, quote, "From the municipal side, what I hear is a series of one-on-one conversations in order to avoid a quorum. The question is, was this a decision made outside of a public forum? And I would say yes. They appear to have done this without any public participation. And the public has a right to a voice in the process. I think it raises a lot of questions under the Sunshine Act, and it raises potential additional problems. Does this council operate like this on a regular basis? Something like this throws up a red flag." End quote. The final story for this week is good news in the sense that it is a reversal of a harmful policy. At a board meeting in June of 2025, yes, last year, the St. Croix Central School Board in Hammond, Wisconsin announced that speakers could not make allegations, charges, or complaints against specific students or employees, use comments or gestures deemed profane, harassing, or abusive, or engage in personal attacks against others. While much of the language sounds reasonable, the school board essentially banned criticism from public comments at school board meetings. In May of this year, FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, wrote an open letter to the board outlining grievances with the new policy. Quote, The Supreme Court has made it clear that even a restriction that even-handedly prohibits disparagement of all groups is viewpoint discriminatory, and federal courts across the country have invalidated meeting rules banning personal attacks or antagonistic, abusive, derogatory, offensive, rude, insulting, or personally directed public comments. It is a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment that officials cannot restrict speech simply because some find it offensive or disagreeable. End quote. The St. Croix Central School Board has responded in a written statement confirming that the previous policy does not reflect the board's current formal or informal policies and practices, and that it, quote, has no plans to enforce such restrictions in the future. End quote. Freedom of speech must be absolute. In the stories covered today, we have seen governing bodies oppress libraries, as well as appointed members of school boards refusing to listen to criticisms. The reversal of the St. Croix Central School Board's public comment policies should stand that regardless of political motive or alignment, the voice of the people should be heard and respected. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. Coming this Friday, we will have an interview with Sarah F. Schachter, author of Georgia Watson and the 99% Campaign. If you'd like to stay up to date with the show, you can follow wherever you are currently listening or on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at BookFairPod. If you'd like to help the Book Fair podcast grow, you can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. You can find links to news sources as well as episodes posted early. Simply add the RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.